All right, I want to welcome everyone to this meeting of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of SABR. I am Bruce McClure, the chapter chair, and we always hold our meetings in conjunction with the Gardner-Waterman chapter of SABR in Vermont, Dr. Clayton Truder, chair. So as we always do, I want to take just a few moments to ask the group tonight is if there are any news and notes that they would like to talk about, research projects or things that they are starting for their fall or winter projects. Has anybody got anything going on that they want to share with the crowd this evening? All right, we'll just move right on. We tend to be a quiet bunch once in a while. I have a couple of announcements I want to make. First, care of my friend Carl Cicito in the Western Massachusetts chapter. There are only 5 days until the Red Sox All-Star Dwight Evans appears at the Springfield SABR chapter meeting at Springfield College. All baseball fans are welcome. Beloved Red Sox All-Star outfielder Dwight Evans and New York Times bestselling author Eric Sherman will talk in person about their new book, Dewey, Behind the Glove, at Springfield College at 10 a.m. this Saturday, September 14th. For further information, please go to the SABR events calendar and click that date where you will see how to get to that meeting. If you have any questions about that, you can email me directly at bruce@brucemcclurenh.com. Second thing that I'd like to go over this evening is the Clyde Sukeforth chapter of SABR invites all of you to a very special in-person meeting with a trailblazing sports journalist on Saturday, September 28th. All baseball fans are invited and encouraged to attend. We will have the pleasure of spending an afternoon on the patio at our chapter founder and chair's home in New London, New Hampshire, enjoying some backyard barbecue fare, celebrating some hopefully good late summer weather, and hearing an incredible story. Joining us will be fellow SABR member and award-winning journalist Melissa Lutke. In her fabulous journalism career, Melissa Lutke reported at Sports Illustrated, was a correspondent at Time, and the editor of Neiman Reports at Harvard University's Neiman Foundation for Journalism. Her lifelong engagement with issues revolving around girls' and women's lives led her to write 2 books, On Our Own, Unmarried Motherhood in America, and Touching Home in China, In Search of Missing Girlhoods. In her latest book, Locker Room Talk, A Woman's Struggle to Get Inside, Melissa revisits her federal lawsuit, Lutke versus Kuhn, which in 1978 secured equal access for women sports reporters. This is an in-person meeting that you do not want to miss. She is a titan of sports journalism, and this is a rare opportunity to commune at the Church of Baseball and listen to one of the greatest stories in our game today. For further information about that, you have my email address. I'll be happy to go over all that with you and give you directions to our home. On with the show. A culture's ephemera reinforces and mirrors society's underlying beliefs and values. Baseball cards and memorabilia in this country have come to reflect the way we regard and value its subjects. Not only does collecting baseball cards act as a gauge of fan interest in the game, but the cards themselves have come to be viewed as iconic talismans of the sport as the players and their achievements have faded from memory. Negro League baseball cards have a longer and more significant history than is generally perceived. A visual tour of important Negro League cards since the mid-1800s demonstrates that the cards have served as a bellwether of how and where Negro League players were perceived and appreciated throughout baseball history. Certain vintage Negro League cards contain subtle messages from the teams and from the players themselves as to how they perceived their status. Even after breaking of the color barrier in 1947, baseball cards of former Negro League players often disparaged or ignored the Negro Leagues to relegate them to historical obscurity. Only beginning in the 1970s did some well-produced Negro League card sets come to market which paralleled the increased awareness and appreciation of the Negro League players. Stephen Greens is a fellow SABR member and author of the book Negro Leaguers and the Hall of Fame. served as research assistant on the Negro League Baseball Collectibles Guide by Philip Gary III in 2013, and has written articles on collecting Negro League baseball cards appearing in SMR magazine and Old Cardboard magazine. And he is here tonight to give his Malloy Conference presentation entitled Negro League Baseball Cards and Memorabilia as a Roadmap to History. Stephen Greens, welcome to Northern New England. How are you, my friend?
Thank you very much, Bruce. Appreciate it. Can
I'm
everybody
just going to
hear me
turn
okay?
it right over to you.
Okay, thank you. For men and women of a certain age, and I see a bunch on this Zoom call, baseball cards were the way we learned about the game. I collected cards passionately as a kid and studied the backs of the cards. The content of those cards was, to many, our education in baseball. Since the cards express what manufacturers regard as significant about baseball, they can play an important part in writing or rewriting history. Baseball cards are also meaningful because the society's objects reflect its beliefs. Cards illustrate cultural values, convey symbolic messages, and sometimes they come from the players themselves. The way in which society has issued and valued Negro League cards over time has mirrored its perception of its ball players. I will sometimes be discussing pricing because how the marketplace values an item represents the importance that we as a people place on it. Let's get to it. Now, the earliest cards featuring African-American players can be found on those of integrated teams. One of the first is Frank Grant's image on the 1887 Buffalo team cabinet card.
Steve, pardon me for interrupting. Before you go any further, do you want to share your screen and your presentation at this point?
Yes.
So you'll go down to the bottom and hit the share button.
I don't see that. I just punched the slide.
Steve, hi, this is Molly, Bruce's wife.
Yes.
You need to go back to the screen with your Zoom meeting.
Okay, let me see how to do that. Okay.
Up at the top. Okay. Now that you're at the Zoom meeting, you're going to scroll to the bottom and there'll be a menu bar there. And then you're going to hit screen share. It's green with an up arrow. It looks like a monitor with an up arrow in it.
Is this the share, correct?
Yep, share screen. Yep.
Okay.
And now once that menu comes up, you can select what you want to share.
Okay. Did that come up?
Nope.
Not quite yet. Nope.
Hit share, and then you'll click the PowerPoint presentation itself.
And then you should probably hit OK.
I don't see OK. Slideshow.
If it's a slideshow, yep, you're going to hit the slideshow for your presentation.
Okay.
And now, is there a share button?
Unfortunately, he hasn't shared his screen yet, so he's got to go to the Zoom meeting. Sorry, folks, we'll be with you in just a moment.
Okay, sorry about that.
It's okay, Steve.
Zoom.
Now find the bottom where it says share.
Share, I see it.
Click that there.
There you go.
There he is.
Now.
Are you up?
Yep. It works.
Now you'll click slide. You'll click from the beginning on the top left. Keep going.
Slideshow. From the beginning. Got it.
And that'll do it. You are set. Take it away, Steve.
Okay. Okay. The earliest cards featuring you got it now?
We got it. That a boy. There you go.
Featuring African-American players can be found in those of integrated teams. One of the first is Frank Grant's image on the 1887 Buffalo team cabinet card. Nearly all the players touch each other with a brotherly hand on the arm or shoulder of a teammate. Only Grant sits alone, neither touching nor touched by any teammate. Grant was also with the team in 1888, but his teammates refused to sit with him at all for that year's card. Another intriguing cabinet card is that with Moses Fleetwood Walker on the 1888 Syracuse Stars. This was a year after Cap Anson had compelled the International Association to agree not to sign any more black players. At the age of 31, Walker was the Stars' frontline catcher and helped them to the pennant. He returned to Syracuse for the 1889 season, and his baseball career ended when he was released on August 23rd. I regard this card as quite telling. While most of the team looks straight ahead at the camera, Walker stands at the end of the last row, arms folded, looking away. Is this his way of signaling that he feels apart from the team? Another pattern that one sees repeated over and over in these old cabinet cards can be seen on this 1894 Finley cabinet card featuring Bud Fowler and Grant Johnson. The black players in these cards are virtually always at the end of the row, evidence that the players were part of the team, but not wholly. In the late 1800s, advertising cards used caricatures of African-American ball players. In 1888, the Stevens Company produced a trade card for a toy called the Darktown Battery Bank. A National Colored Baseball League had been formed in 1887, which reportedly influenced the company to produce the toy. While some see this as a tribute to America's first professional Negro Baseball League, it's hard to ignore the heavily stereotyped appearance of the figures, common for the racial insensitivity of the time. This card is now the most valuable baseball trade card in existence, one selling at auction for over $12,000. In 1896, a trade card of the Page Fence Giants was issued, featuring Grant Home Run Johnson, George Wilson, and Charlie Grant. The Page Fence Giants were an African-American team based in Adrian, Michigan. This card is the only one known to feature an all-black team in the 19th century. Many collectors consider this to be the first true Negro League baseball card. Less than 10 of these cards are known today and would run you from $5,000 to $14,000, depending upon condition. The first baseball cards of Negro League players as tobacco premiums were issued in Cuba in 1909 and 1910. Cabanas and Punch Cigars produced cards of Pete Hill, Grant Johnson, Pop Lloyd, and Jose Mendez. Only a few copies of these cards are known to exist. What's noteworthy about these cards is that they were issued in Cuba where the players were venerated, with no cards of individual Negro Leaguers issued during this time in the United States. In the earliest 20th century, cabinet cards and postcards of leading black teams began to be distributed in the United States. Here are just a few. The 1909 Leland Giants with Rube Foster and Pete Hill. The 1913 All Nations team with John Donaldson and Jose Mendez. And the 1914 Lincoln Giants with Joe Williams, Dick Redding, Louis Santop, and Spot Poles. Cards such as these come to market these days only at auction. In 1916, there was one card of a professional black ball player that slipped out in an American set. Claimed by his team to be an Indian, Jimmy Claxton was a 23-year-old pitcher who landed with the Pacific Coast League's Oakland Oaks. While Claxton's tenure with the Oaks turned out to last only a week before they threw him off the team, he was immortalized on the Znuts card when the photographer happened to show up that week. Only 9 copies of this card have turned up to date, and they sell between $5,000 and $25,000, depending upon condition. In the 1920s, again in Cuba, cards of great American Negro Leaguers issued as tobacco premiums in sets depicting 80 or more players were issued. Here we find multiple cards of Oscar Charleston, Biz Mackey, Pop Lloyd, and other major stars. These cards, of which less than 20 each are currently known, achieve high premiums because the earliest are regarded by collectors as the rookie or first cards of these players. I'm going to focus for a minute on the 1924 Cuban Aguilitas card of Oscar Charleston. In 2011, this card sold for $8,225. In 2022, the same Oscar Charleston card was resold for $132,000. It's hard to escape the conclusion that this card only rose in value because we as a society now value the Negro Leagues as significant. The most renowned Venezuelan card from this era is that of Martin Diego, issued in 1931 by Double Aguila, because it features him playing in Venezuela, wearing his Hilldale Daisies uniform from the Eastern Colored League in the United States. The true shame of baseball card history is that the Negro Leagues were so neglected in this country during their peak. There was a remarkable exception which occurred in one place in the South where racial differences were slightly less pronounced. Hot Springs, Arkansas was an early spring training site where white and black major league teams trained side by side. Starting in 1930, Harrison Studios issued a series of postcards over a 3-year period of the Homestead Grays and the Pittsburgh Crawfords, fortuitously catching 2 of the greatest Negro League teams at the heights of their fame. To date, 11 different cards from the set have been uncovered. This 1930 card of the Homestead Grays features 4 Hall of Famers: Oscar Charleston, Judy Johnson, Smokey Joe Williams, and Cum Posey. In 1931, Harrison Studios issued individual cards of the players, including the first card of Josh Gibson. The Gibson card, which was found in the estate of a fellow Negro League player, is autographed by Josh Gibson on the front and back. It is the only copy of this card known. It features Gibson in his rookie year. He joined the team in the late summer of 1930, but this was his first full year. And it is the only autographed full-body image of Gibson known to exist. It achieved the highest price ever paid for an American postcard when it sold at auction for $87,000 back in 2007. This card is referred to in the hobby as the Holy Grail of Negro League baseball cards. I consider this card to be the most important Negro League baseball card in existence. In 1932, Harrison Studios issued a postcard of the Pittsburgh Crawfords, featuring the first image of Satchel Paige on an American card, standing next to Josh Gibson. A truly unique card was also issued in 1932 by Harrison Studios of, hold on, let me just scroll down, of Crawford's owner, Gus Greenlee, together with his bookmaker partner, Woogie Harris, and their wives. I love this card, even though my spell checker keeps trying to reject the name Woogie. Throughout the 1940s, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic all produced baseball cards of Negro League players. Multiple cards were issued of Hall of Famers Ray Brown, Roy Dandridge, Martin Diego, Hilton Smith, and other stars. These cards are readily available, often for a few $100s. Some of the more fascinating cards were produced in Mexico, where the Negro League players were paid better and far better respected than in the United States. Here's a 1942 Mexican card of Monty Irvin and Ray Dandridge in their best attire, standing in front of a palm tree, clearly enjoying themselves. To me, the most intriguing sets of this era were issued by Toleteros in Puerto Rico each winter season from 1947 through 1951. The most collectible of these is the 1951 card of Josh Gibson, which is often mistakenly referred to as his rookie card. In fact, this card was a tribute card issued years after his death. As less than 35 copies of the Gibson Toleteros card have surfaced to date, it has been called the Honus Wagner of Negro League cards. To demonstrate the increasing importance of Negro League cards, this card sold in 2011 for $11,500, and the exact card was resold in 2021 for $104,000. Cards of the Negro Leagues virtually disappeared for a time after the Negro Leagues faded to minor league status in the early 1950s. The major exception was a card created in 1952 by the Indianapolis Clowns of their teenage infielder, Henry Aaron, his first baseball card. Aaron only played 14 games for the Clowns before his contract was sold to Milwaukee. This card is so rare that I've never seen one come to market. Following Jackie Robinson's debut with the Dodgers in 1947, cards of former Negro Leaguers began to be issued by major American manufacturers. The most important of these is Satchel Paige's short-printed 1948-49 Leaf card, which is now regarded as the rarest and most significant post-war baseball card. In 2012, you could have picked up a decent copy for just over $2,000. Now a beat-up copy will start at $20,000, and a near-mint copy of this card sold in 2018 for $432,000. What's even more fascinating about this period than the prices is how Topps, which dominated the baseball card market in the 1950s, chose to ignore or disparage the Negro Leagues past. Historian Robert Fitz, some of whose observations I include in this talk, conducted a study of baseball cards in the early 1950s, which showed that 90% of the cards of non-Negro League players with less than 5 years experience discuss their minor league history. For former Negro League players, only 10% refer to their Negro League background. Where they do, the cards refer to the Negro Leagues as semi-pro or unorganized, rather than the professional leagues they were. The card of former Negro Leaguer Johnny Wyatt states that for the line 1955, out of organized baseball. In fact, Wyatt played for the Kansas City Monarchs in 1955. Bob Trice's 1954 Topps card contains a comic strip picture on the back showing him batting for the Homestead Grays with a white catcher crouching behind him. The comic effectively masks the fact that the Grays were a Negro League team. Monty Irvin's 1953 card states that the former Lincoln University star has been in organized baseball since 1949. Nothing about his 8 years in the Negro Leagues, which led to the Hall of Fame. Jim Gilliam's 1953 card expresses surprise how, quote, with just 2 seasons of organized baseball under his belt, Jim captured the second base spot on the Dodger infield, quote. Perhaps his 6 seasons in the Negro Leagues could have provided a clue. The earliest card of Larry Doby was issued by Exhibit in 1947. It's a photo of him in his Negro League uniform, but with all Newark Eagles insignias airbrushed out, essentially erasing history. Luke Easter's 1954 card just made stuff up to explain how he became a star so quickly in the American League. Luke was one of the country's best softball players. Luke never played baseball until 1946, says the card. In fact, Easter never played softball, but he had played industrial and Negro League ball as far back as 1937. Buck O'Neill ranked him right behind Buck Leonard as the second best first baseman in Negro League history. Then there is Henry Aaron's 1956 Topps card. It features a color photo of Aaron with a second image of him with a big Milwaukee M on his hat as he slides across home plate. Except if you look closely at the face of the player sliding across the plate, it's not Aaron, it's Willie Mays. I guess to Topps they looked alike and they assumed no one would notice. In 1963, it got worse. Gad Fun issued a series of comic baseball cards, which included the first regular baseball card of Moses Fleetwood Walker, and correctly identified him rather than Jackie Robinson as the first Black professional in the traditional major leagues. As such, the hobby deems it to be his rookie card, but the card itself is a travesty. It depicts racially insensitive caricatures of Walker and his brother Weldy, which could have been drawn in the mid-1800s, eating watermelon as they play the field. All these cards demonstrate that while baseball was now desegregated and the Negro Leagues were no longer of economic importance, the card companies continued to denigrate the former Negro Leagues and its players by omission and outright prejudice. That baseball cards were considered children's toys allowed them to escape attention as ideologically charged items. By ignoring the contribution of Negro League ball, they implied that Black ball was inferior and were rewriting history to give the impression that African Americans played little role in the development of baseball. The baseball cards of the 1950s and 1960s therefore actively participated in relegating the Negro Leagues to historical obscurity. It wasn't until the 1970s that this prejudice began to be reversed, as independent manufacturers began to produce sets of Negro League cards. To date, there have been dozens of Negro League card sets issued by independent companies and as promotions by companies like McDonald's and Kraft. But in my view, the first great modern Negro League set was a two-part issuance by Laughlin in 1974 and 1978, with bios on the back, which seemed to have come directly from Robert Peterson's book, Only the Ball Was White. Laughlin was prescient in that 22 of the 36 players featured in the 1974 set would eventually make the Hall of Fame. A few years back, you could have picked up these cards for a few dollars. Now a fully graded set would run you over $4,000. What's particularly noteworthy about the Negro League sets of this time is that many of the players were still alive and available to autograph their cards. However, only 9 Negro League Hall of Famers survived until this era: Satchel Paige, Leon Day, Bull Papa Bell, Ray Dandridge, Buck O'Neill, Willie Wells, Buck Leonard, Judy Johnson, and Monty Irvin. Premiums paid for baseball cards autographed by one of these Hall of Famers range from a Monty Irvin card signed for about $20 to Satchel Paige signed cards up to $15,000. As virtually all of the players have now passed, cards autographed by leading Negro League veterans are probably among the hobby's best investments. In 1990, Eclipse Cards issued a 36-card set of Negro League cards consisting of watercolor portraits by artist Mark Chiarello. This set has a famous error card, later corrected, displaying Josh Gibson's artwork on Oscar Charleston's card, which can still be found for under $20. Beginning in 1991, Ron Lewis Artists produced 2 sets of 30 cards each, which were distributed by the Negro League Players Association. As all of the players on these sets were alive when these sets were produced, these cards were often used by collectors to collect autographs. It's almost impossible to find the Clyde McNeil card, as he died shortly after the set was issued, and his family took to using a rubber stamp for collectors who sought his autograph. It took me years to complete the actual autographs for my entire set. My favorite recent set was issued in 2020 by Dreams Fulfilled. It's a truly beautiful 184-card set, which was commissioned as part of the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Negro National League. Only 5,000 sets were made and can still be found online. The major card companies finally stopped ignoring the Negro Leagues in the 1990s and began issuing tribute cards. What I like about these cards is that the companies such as Topps and Panini are paying the estates of the players for the use of their images. Many of these cards include the player's signature on a piece of the player's uniform embedded in the card to make them more special to collectors. Here's one example with Mule Suttles, Bull Papa Bell, and Roy Campanella. But the most sought after of any of these cards are those of Josh Gibson. Since Gibson died before the advent of the autograph era, his signature is rare and extremely valuable. There have even been 2 baseball cards which have had a signature of Gibson embedded in the card. One sold in 2003 for $12,500 and resold in 2021 for $97,000. His game-used equipment is virtually non-existent. In 2005, Gibson's family sold a game-used bat in its possession to Topps for an undisclosed sum. It was one of only 2 Josh Gibson bats known to exist. Each year since then, Topps has issued a handful of cards containing a small slice of the bat embedded in the card. Topps even offered a one-of-a-kind card incorporating the Gibson nameplate from the bat barrel. Many people in the hobby felt it was improper for such an important object to be chopped up in this manner, but Gibson's family certainly had the right to make that decision. In any event, these cards often sell for over $1,000 each. However, don't assume that Negro League cards are all pricey. More than 50 different cards of Turkey Stearns, 300 cards of Cool Papa Bell, and over 1,200 cards of Satchel Paige have been issued since 1974. Many of these are available for $1 or $2. And it's not simply the Hall of Famers. Almost every major Negro League has had a few cards issued. Artie Wilson was a shortstop who achieved a cup of coffee with the New York Giants in 1951 and was never included in any major company release. I've still collected almost 40 different cards of Wilson, many from his time in Puerto Rico and the Pacific Coast League, and none costing over $25. Let me close with a brief note on Negro League memorabilia other than cards. Much of it is extremely rare and difficult to verify. Negro Leaguers had no reason to consider their game-related items as anything special, so what has survived has tended to be quite unique. Here are some auction results. Josh Gibson's game-used bat sold at Christie's in 2016 for $319,000. Now, this is a picture of me holding the bat. I didn't buy it. I don't have that kind of money. But when I went into the exhibit, I asked the attendant if I could hold it. And I got to tell you, it was really exciting. It was like, like Indiana Jones when he got to hold the Holy Grail. It really was exciting. And right after this picture was taken, the curator happened to walk by the room and he saw me holding the bat. And he ran in the room screaming, said, no one's allowed to touch the bat. Put it back in the exhibit. So I think I was the only person who got to hold this bat before it was sold. Rube Foster signed letter, sold in 2016 for $15,000. Similar letter sold in 2024 for $41,000. This is Josh Gibson's signed 1941 Puerto Rico contract. Now, this is an amazing document. It calls, I know you can't read it from out there, but it calls for a salary of $25 a week for Josh Gibson, round-trip transportation to Puerto Rico, and no per diem. The contract itself sold at auction for $96,000. A Josh Gibson and Satchel Paige signed baseball sold in 2004 for $4,800. In 2022, the exact same ball sold for $42,000. As the Negro League's greatest players begin to become household names, hobbyists and investors have become aware of the extreme rarity and historical significance of these players' collectibles. In fact, no segment of the baseball card market has increased in value over the past decade as much as that of Negro League stars. The integration of Negro League statistics into those of the major leagues should only accelerate this trend. I don't know where the market will go, but I do know that there are about 40 known copies of the Honus Wagner card, and none sell for less than $1 million. There are over 2,000 graded copies of the 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle card, and a high-graded copy sold last year for over $12 million. There is only one known copy of the 1931 rookie card of Josh Gibson, and only 13 known copies of the 1923 rookie card of Oscar Charleston, perhaps the Negro League's greatest player. I'll let you do the math. Thank you.
If you have a question for Stephen Greens, now is your time to ask the question by going down to the bottom of the screen and clicking the heart with the word react underneath. Once you do that, you'll hit raise hand and we'll get you in line so that you can ask a question of our presenter tonight, Stephen Greens. Stephen, this is the one thing that really strikes me about your entire presentation is seeing the backs of Topps baseball cards calling the Negro Leagues semi-pro leagues. That's just fascinating to me to see how disparagingly the Negro Leagues were thought of back then. I can't get over that.
Yeah, it's, if you really study the cards of the 50s, it's pretty bad. I mean, how about when they call Luke Easter? He grew up playing softball. He never played softball. He was a Negro League star.
Oh, man.
They just made stuff up. Because he came into the American League smashing home runs. They had to make something up to explain how he was so good.
Because he can't be as good as the major leaguers now. Oh my
Right.
goodness.
Right.
That's terrible. We've got a line of questions for you, Stephen. Karen Holleran, you are up first. Karen, how you doing?
Hey, I have a question. Well, I have two. There's a Honus Wagner Museum in Pittsburgh. Have you ever been there?
I've never been there.
And there also is a Heinz Center for baseball in Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I didn't know if you ever had a chance to go in there.
I never have, but I would be interested. If I ever get to Pittsburgh, I'll definitely go.
Okay.
Next
you.
one up, Ken Edwards. Ken, you can unmute and you are on. Go get him. How you doing, Ken?
Great to see you, Bruce.
see you.
Hey, Steve, thank you. This was wonderful. Could we go back and look at that Hank Aaron Indianapolis card?
Sure.
I couldn't tell if that was picturing his reversed hand batting grip at that time.
Hold on. Let me.
So you need to be in the Zoom app first and go down and hit the share button.
This is the 56 card. This one.
No, not the 56 card. The one
Oh,
of
the
him
rookie card.
on the Indianapolis Clowns.
Gotcha.
Steve, do me a favor and go into the
There
Zoom
we-
app first.
Okay, it's not up.
Nope.
Okay.
And hit the green share button with the up arrow. We'll get you into this again.
Okay. Zoom. Okay. Green share.
Down on the bottom,
See it? Got it.
click that,
Yep.
and then click your presentation.
Share.
And up it comes.
There
and
it
there's
is.
the card.
There's a card. Is that reversed?
It is not. That is
That looks
not
correct.
reversed. That is not reversed. Okay. I just wanted to check that out. My next question for you is it's a question about the analysis of the back of baseball cards for African Americans versus whites. Have you or anyone done an analysis on the adjectives and way that blacks are described versus whites?
Good
You
question.
can literally count the types of adjectives used in the 50s and 60s. And is there any pattern to that? To your point that there was made up history, et cetera, et cetera. It would be interesting to do that analysis and to literally count it out to see how African Americans were described versus whites quantitatively. Has anyone ever done that?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I do remember things like, for example, there is a Hank Aaron card where the back of the card shows a cartoon of him and talks about him being a really flashy dresser. I mean, that's something that you would not see on the card of a white player.
I might be interested in doing that analysis
That
someday.
would be a great
I
analysis.
think it'd be fascinating. Thank you very much. This was excellent.
Jumping off the question that Ken had regarding adjectives used, I mean, let's talk about pictures used for just a minute. Steve, could you move to that slide of Fleetwood Walker's rookie card?
Yeah, that's an extraordinary card. Hold on.
The one in the 60s there,
Yeah, hold on.
where he was. There it is, slide 26.
I mean, that's
Okay, so this is what
unbelievable.
grabs me. You know, Ken talks about the usage of adjectives to describe Negro League ball players, and I'm looking at pictures used to describe Negro League ball players, and wow.
That's unbelievable. I mean, what?
Oh, wow.
They look more like monkeys than players.
Well, that's, I think that is the subliminal
Yeah.
whistle there, for lack of better term. And Ken's question just that just jogged it real quick. I'm looking at that saying, oh my, but it was a different time. I
Different-
know, but that doesn't necessarily make hindsight and looking at the card now, it doesn't necessarily make it correct. Jim Laurie, my friend, you are up. How you doing this evening, Jim?
I'm doing well. Steve, I have a question that I'd like to know if you're able to speak to the to Bill Veeck attempting to buy the Philadelphia Phillies in the 40s.
Yeah, I've researched that. I've read a couple of books about that incident. And more and more, I'm feeling it was more of a story of his than a reality. I don't know how you feel about it. There isn't a lot of historical substance behind it. It's something in his mind, but do you think it really happened?
Well, there've been enough anecdotal articles written that makes me think that there might be some substance to it. I mean, it comes out in several different ways in different media places. So
He certainly told the story, and it does make sense that once he tipped off the commissioner to what he was doing, he got blocked. So it does make some sense.
he got blocked by the other owners from what I've heard.
But that would have been remarkable if he had done that. Because at that time, I mean, some of the Negro League players were extraordinary.
There's a very good article from a 1997 National Pastime with Veeck on the cover that analyzes all the moves he made and whether he made them with respect to purchasing the Philadelphia team. I recommend that everyone read that. It's excellent if you're interested in that.
If you could drop a link in the chat, Ken, that'd be great. Ryan McClanahan, you're up. How you doing, Ryan?
Hi, Steve. Thank you very much. This is really great. So a lot of these Negro League players' cards are really now getting very expensive. And I collect vintage sports cards. So, how careful should someone be if they were wanting to get into collecting these guys' cards? Do you have any tips for us?
Yeah, I would definitely rely on the auctions and just buy cards that have been, certified by either SGC or PSA, because there's a lot of stuff out there that, can't be verified. But most of the stuff that's important is showing up at auction these days. Very little of it is on eBay because these cards are too old and too vintage.
What about autographs?
As I said, only a couple of the Hall of Famers survived until the 1970s. Again, I would rely on autographs only if they've been certified by PSA or another company.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Steve, do you think there is any appreciable amount of unfound or unearthed Negro League baseball cards or anything like that? What's your opinion on that?
There are, and every year cards show up either from Mexico or the Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico that have not been seen before. It's and it's the hobby gets very excited when they show up, and they're out there. And it's for example, that Josh Gibson autographed rookie card just showed up about 12 years ago from the estate of another Negro League player, and nobody knew about it. So they're out there, and it's exciting.
That's
to
great.
Collectors like myself.
Molly, you're up.
Steve, thank you for coming and presenting tonight. First of all, I was interested in knowing a little more about your personal collection and how many years it's taken you to amass your personal Negro League baseball card collection.
I started about 15 years ago. I realized that these guys were great players. They were not appreciated by the marketplace. And it was fun for me to go about, collecting them. And I was picking them up fairly cheaply but lately the market has exploded. You know, you heard the numbers, and it's getting crazy, and it's getting beyond my means. But it's always been fun for me because a lot of these cards, only a couple of copies exist of each card.
And does it span different years, or were you interested in only 1 year?
No, it spans the Negro Leagues go back to like the 1880s.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that. I just
1950.
wasn't sure if you focused on 1 year.
No, I go for everything.
Okay.
It all is exciting to me.
Thank you so much again.
Sure.
Ken dropped in the chat the article that he referred to, The Truth About Bill Veeck and the 43 Phillies by David Jordan and John Rossi from the 1998 National Pastime. More than likely, that a copy of that National Pastime book is in the Art Springsteen Memorial Library. I'll have to take a look and see as if we have that one. I'm fairly certain we do. If anybody wants to borrow that, let us know. Gary Joquin, you are up. How you doing, Gary?
Oh, pretty good, from Beaverton, Oregon. I arrived at the meeting late, trying to get my house painted. Last week, Alan Cohen gave a fascinating presentation on Josh Gibson and how through the course of his career hit home runs in about 90 ballparks across the country. And I thought that the presentation, it would have been fascinating to see pictures of the ballparks, assuming that they existed, as well as pictures of the players at the age, of Gibson, at the age in which he was at those ballparks. So I'm just wondering, given that you're really into baseball cards, which are a good photographic record, if, say, for example, for Gibson and for other Negro League players, if you can actually see a progression from the young ball player to the ball player in their twilight years in the baseball cards, and if so, are there online databases where these cards are accessible?
The answer is that the cards are so rare that that's not really the case. You can do it in photographs, but this rookie Josh Gibson card, which I'm trying to click on now, that's basically the only card that exists from the time that he played. The only one.
Wow.
That's, you know, these guys were ignored in this country during their heyday, completely ignored.
So is anyone building an online database of the cards that do exist?
There are books trying to put all the Negro League cards together, but I'm not aware of a database.
Thank you.
There's a project for the SABR Baseball Cards Committee, if I ever saw one.
Absolutely.
Ken also has something in the chat that says, I strongly recommend reading the alternative history book by Peter Schilling, The End of Baseball, a novel. It imagines what would have happened if Veeck had purchased the Philadelphia A's. That might be a very interesting book to find as well. Ken, thank you very much for that. Do we have any we do have other questions. Ken's raised his hand. Go get him. Unmute and you're on.
Yeah. One last question. Given how positively baseballreference.com has evolved with respect to adding the Negro Leagues from 1920 to 1948 to its database, do you believe that there's now a market for publishing or printing team card sets of each one of the Negro League teams from 1920 to 1948?
That would really be interesting. That would really be interesting. I think there would be a market. I think there would be. I would be intrigued.
Okay, I'll be the first to invest.
I'll be second.
I just wanted on record that I heard Ken say that. He can't get out of it now.
Let's do it.
Anything further for Stephen this evening before we wind it up? All right. Stephen, this has been a really, really interesting presentation, and I really appreciate you doing this. Thank you very much for this.
Thank
Now, I
you.
want to let everybody know that we have another great meeting this week, Wednesday night, this coming Wednesday, the 11th at 7 p.m. Eastern. SABR's East Coast Cooperative, a coalition of 6 chapters throughout the Northeast, will be back with another great presenter for you. And she's actually on the call this evening. H.R. Ryan, the vice chair of the Clyde Sukeforth chapter, will be with us to give us her talk. And I'm just going to turn it over to her for a second. Why don't you give us a little preview, Heather? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay. I will be presenting this book, the 4th book by former pitcher Mark Littell. And the title is Boot Heel Boy. And I edited it after he passed away in September of 2022. So it is finally complete with contributions from like 40 or more of his friends and teammates. And I will be telling you all about it.
So you don't want to miss that. The link to sign up for that is in the SABR events calendar, and it was sent out with today's Monday message. So get back into that, sign up for that meeting, and we will see everybody here on Wednesday night. And finally, if you like what we're doing here, please like and subscribe to our channel to be alerted to each of our weekly uploads. And if you're a baseball fan watching this, you need to join the Society for American Baseball Research, the premier baseball community. Offering an amazing baseball buffet of options to explore your fandom, SABR boasts more than 35 different research communities, over 80 regional chapters, and innumerable opportunities to connect with baseball minds across the world. For more information, go to sabr.org/join today. Stephen Greens, you are fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We appreciate you doing this. We're going to get everybody out of here. We're going to see everybody Wednesday night. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.